Welcome to r/entitled parents, where Karen is losing it over a gift. I'm devastated about my husband's wealthy family's reaction to my first big gift for him. I grew up dirt poor. We're talking the kind of poor where you're eating cereal with water because milk is not an option. But honestly, my childhood was still rich in a lot of ways. My parents made sure my siblings and I felt loved and cared for, even if money was tight. Christmas was a huge deal in our house. My parents would save all year just so we could each get 3 gifts. One thing to wear, one book, and one fun thing. It wasn't extravagant, but we treasured it. My husband, on the other hand, grew up in a completely different world. His family made around $300,000 a year, and their Christmases looked like something straight out of a movie. They went all out. We're talking $2,000 or more worth of gifts for each kid under the tree. It was like a competition to see who could outdo the others with the flashiest presents. Fast forward to now. My husband and I have been together for 5 years, married for 2.5. While he didn't get financial help as an adult, we both worked our butts off to build a decent life together. This year, for the first time, we actually had some extra money to spend on Christmas, and I was beyond excited to do something special. My husband has been talking about wanting to learn guitar for a while now. He's never played, but he's mentioned it so many times over the years. We couldn't afford it before, but I figured this Christmas was the perfect chance to surprise him. I started researching beginner guitars, and let me tell you, I agonized over this. I saw that entry-level guitars were around $150, but they could go up to $5,000 or more for the real fancy ones. At first, I set a budget of $500, but then I thought, I want to go big. I ended up spending around $900 Canadian dollars on the guitar, plus another $200 on accessories. For someone like me, who grew up counting pennies, dropping over $1,000 on a gift felt insane. But I was excited to do this for him because he deserves it, and we finally had the means to make it happen. I couldn't wait to see his face when he opened it. Christmas morning rolled around, and we waited to open the bigger gifts until his family came over. By the time it was our turn for couples gifts, I was practically bouncing with excitement. I went to get the guitar case from its hiding spot and I brought it out. He was grinning as he opened it, and I was ready for the big moment. But then, "Oh, thanks babe, never heard of this brand." Cue my stomach dropping. It wasn't the enthusiastic reaction I'd been hoping for, but I brushed it off. I told myself it's not about me, it's about him, right? Then his brother chimed in. "Aw, it's nice. A decent cheap one to start out with." That alone stung, but then his dad, who used to play guitar back in the day, added, "Yeah, they're known for their lower-end models. If you stick with it, we can chip in for a nice one next year." I know it's just a gift, but hearing those comments crushed me. I had poured so much thought, time, and money into this present. I wanted it to be perfect, and instead, it felt like it was being dismissed as a placeholder until he could get something better. The worst part is, I think their reactions got into his head because he hasn't touched the guitar since. This was something he'd wanted for years, and now it's just sitting there like an afterthought. His mom was the last to chime in, and I guess she'd been bottling up her anger this whole time while the others had spoken. "Look, if you need help buying his gifts from now on, just let us know. This is pathetic. That thing is a children's toy, and my son deserves better." Everyone laughed at what she said, but I could tell she was serious, and she just stared daggers at me. I can't even fully explain why this hit me so hard, but it brought up all these feelings from my childhood. I felt like I was 9 years old again, trying to be excited about my secondhand Aeropostale hoodie while my friend unwrapped a brand new MacBook and tickets to Disney. It's not about the money, it's about the effort and love behind the gift. I guess I just needed to vent. I know I'm probably overthinking it, but I can't shake this feeling of being small and not good enough. Update. I spoke with him this morning, trying to stay calm. I'm not confrontational by nature, so I set my anger aside and approached the conversation with patience and grace. I asked if he was upset about the guitar, whether it was the brand, the appearance, or something else. I told him my feelings were hurt when his family made comments that, even if unintentional, made it seem like I had picked out a kid's starter instrument or something. I explained that I had put a lot of thought and research into everything, the build, the color, all of it, to make sure his first experience with the guitar would be a really nice one. He was shocked to hear I had been thinking about it that way. He said he hadn't thought twice about what his family said. He apologized for both their reaction and his own, and he explained that his comment about the brand was exactly what it sounded like. He just hadn't heard of it before, that was all. He said he loved the guitar and was just caught up in the craziness of Christmas, which is why he hasn't played it yet. That eased my mind a lot. I guess I'm just used to the over-the-top reactions in my family, so it threw me off when his wasn't the same. I'm still a little disappointed because a month's worth of excitement and anticipation got slashed pretty quickly, but at the end of the day, knowing he likes it makes their opinions matter a lot less. Would I be the jerk if I don't include my wife on a trip I planned for my friend? I've been friends with A, 29 female, since we were teenagers, like 15 or 16. Back then, A picked up smoking because of her friends. She wasn't a heavy smoker or anything, and she used to say she understood the risks and wanted to quit. Me being a dumb but well-meaning teenager, I made her a deal to motivate her. We both love cars and motorsports, so I said, if you don't smoke ever again, I'll take you to your favorite F1 race someday. Grandstand tickets, flights, the whole thing. Obviously, this was a teenage me, talking without fully grasping how expensive that would be, but I was serious about the promise, and I always wanted to stick to it. A and I have always been more like siblings than anything else. My wife, who's 30, knows this and has known A for as long as we've been together, about 9 years now. A even helped set me up with my wife and was a groomswoman at our wedding. There's zero romantic history between us, and my wife has always been aware of that. Fast forward to this year. I finally had the money, time, and circumstances to make the trip happen. A has held up her end of the deal all these years, so I wanted to do the same. It felt like the perfect time to plan the trip. It's even close to A's birthday next year. My wife knew about the deal and thought it was sweet. She's always referred to it as wholesome. She and A get along fine. They're not super close, but they have a friendly relationship. In September, I booked the flights and tickets. I thought it was pretty obvious that this was going to be a me and A trip, since that was the deal we made years ago. I even mentioned it to my wife while booking, and she didn't seem to have an issue. But here's where it gets messy. A couple of days ago, my wife mentioned how excited she was for the trip. I was confused and gently told her I'd only booked 2 tickets for me and A. She immediately got upset. She asked if I could add another race ticket, but they're sold out. Then she asked if I could at least book her on our flight and add her to the hotel. This caught me off guard. I explained again that this was a thing between me and A promise I'd made when we were kids. My wife seemed to understand that when I booked everything, but now she's really hurt and barely talking to me. She was even cold toward A when we saw her recently, which is super out of character for her. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Does my wife suddenly not trust me? Is it an insecurity thing, or is she just feeling left out and I miss the signs? I don't want to ruin this trip, but now I'm second guessing everything. Would I be the jerk if I don't include my wife? Edit, just to clarify, I had a big sit-down conversation with my wife before I booked anything. I broke down my plans, the costs, covered entirely by money I had saved, and the whole purpose of the trip. She was totally fine with everything back then, or at least that's what she said. Edit 2. After a long talk with my wife, I'm now booking her onto our flight and adding her to the hotel. I still feel like this could have been avoided if she'd brought up her feelings earlier, but I get why people are saying I might be the jerk. I thought I'd communicated everything clearly, but clearly something got lost along the way. Have you ever taken your wife on an expensive trip like this before? Not including your honeymoon if you even did a trip for it? I'm asking because the way it sounds, it seems that this is the first time you've had enough money to go on a vacation and you used it to fund a trip with a friend that doesn't even include your wife. You're the jerk anyways, but if that's the case, it's even worse. My parents hate my fiance. I'm 27 female, he's 28 male. My parents have never been fans of my fiance, and they haven't exactly been subtle about it. We've talked about it multiple times, but after today, I've officially had enough. We've been together for 3.5 years, and we got engaged this past November. Instead of being happy for me, my parents seem to be doubling down on their dislike of him, and it's exhausting. To give you some background, my parents are pretty traditional. When I first started dating, I really wanted their approval, so I looked for someone I thought they would like. Someone educated, with a good job, from a respectable family, and who shared our religion and culture. When I met my fiance, he checked all those boxes and more. He's hardworking, ambitious, kind, and incredibly supportive of me and my dreams. On top of that, he's genuinely my best friend. We laugh at the same dumb jokes, and we just get each other. I thought my parents would love him too. Boy, was I wrong. The criticism started early. We live about an hour apart, and since he's in the city where there's more to do, we usually hang out there. My parents hated that I drove to see him. They insisted he should pick me up, drive me to his place, and then bring me back home the same night, even though we don't do sleepovers. I tried explaining how unrealistic that was. If he picked me up after his 9-to-5 job, we'd barely have time together, but my parents didn't care. They just labeled him not a gentleman. Never mind the fact that he opens car doors for me, plans thoughtful date nights, and buys me flowers regularly. To me, he's the perfect gentleman, but apparently he'll never meet their standards. Then there's his career. He has a well-paying job and also invests in real estate, which is something he's really passionate about. He owns several properties, including a few small apartment buildings, and rents them out. Yes, he has loans, but they're under control, and he's working hard to pay them off. He's explained his long-term goals to me, and we've gone over our finances together. I know we'll be fine. My parents, however, see it as irresponsible and risky. They think he's going to drag us into debt and ruin our future. I get that being a landlord isn't for everyone, but they've turned it into this huge moral issue. It's frustrating because I know they don't understand how much effort he puts into this or how smart he's been about it. The breaking point came today. My mom went on this rant about how she can't stand the sight of him because he treats me so poorly. I was floored. He's never been anything but loving and respectful to me. She said it was because he makes too many jokes and messes with me too much. That's just how we are. We both love to joke around, and it's honestly one of my favorite things about our relationship. My mom thinks it's immature and embarrassing, and she said he should act obsessed with me instead. It's so dramatic and it makes no sense. My parents joke around with each other the same way, so what's the problem? To make things worse, my mom is clearly upset that I'm getting married at all. She keeps saying she won't make it when I leave, like I'm moving to another country instead of an hour away. I still plan to visit regularly, but she's acting like I'm abandoning her. It's this weird mix of guilt-tripping and overprotectiveness that's just draining. Looking back, I've realized my parents have always been helicopter parents. Growing up, I felt like I needed their approval for everything. Even now, I second-guess myself because I'm scared of disappointing them. It's something I've been working on, but moments like this make it so much harder. They don't seem to realize how much their constant criticism is affecting me. I'm trying to stay excited about being engaged and planning a wedding, but it's tough when my parents refuse to be happy for me. Sometimes they fake it, and I think we're making progress, but then something like today happens, and I realize that nothing has changed. I feel bad for my fiancé too, because he's gone out of his way to bond with them. He's brought my mom flowers and treats. He spent time alone with my dad to build a relationship, and made a lot of real effort to be part of the family. But they're still holding on to this irrational dislike of him, and it hurts. So now I'm stuck wondering, am I missing something? Are they right? Am I just blind to his flaws? Or are they being overdramatic and unreasonable? I honestly don't know how to handle this anymore. I just want them to be happy for me, but it feels like they never will be. I don't think your parents hate your fiancé per se. They would hate anyone you were engaged to. They don't want you to grow up and be your own person, so they're trying to get you to leave him. All of these things they say about him are just pathetic excuses. If your parents really loved you, they would support you in your relationship, even if they had their own doubts. You need to get some therapy because your parents have stunted your emotional independence. You need some tools to help you navigate your future relationship with them because their end game is going to be him or us. Do you want that? I don't think you do, otherwise you wouldn't have posted. So therapy and less contact is the way forward. Also, don't accept any help from them for your wedding. They will use this as leverage to put obstacles in your way. Best wishes for your future together. Am I the jerk for refusing to ski with the child of my wife's friend when it became clear that they exaggerated his skill level? I'm 48 male, have a vacation house near a ski resort, which I've owned since before I met my wife and had kids, who are 11 and 13. My boys have grown up skiing there, logging about 25 to 35 days a year, and they've done tons of lessons. At this point, they're both pretty much skiing prodigies, ripping down black diamonds like it's nothing. After Christmas, my wife invited her colleague, Annie, her husband, and their 12-year-old son, Tom, to stay with us for a few days. I wasn't thrilled about this for a couple of reasons. First, my kids don't get along with Tom. He's one of those kids who has to one-up everyone around him. You say you caught a fish? Tom caught a bigger one. You learned a new trick? Tom already mastered it. Except he's usually exaggerating, and my kids are over it. Second, Annie's family planned to spend their time cross-country skiing while my wife volunteered me to take Tom downhill skiing with our kids. She said Annie claimed Tom was a good skier, but we were all skeptical. My wife wanted the kids to bond so badly, probably to solidify her friendship with Annie, but I could already see this was going to be a disaster. I told my wife I wasn't sacrificing our family ski time to babysit a kid who was likely not at our level. After some back and forth, we reached a compromise. I'd take Tom on the condition that Annie and Tom understood the kind of terrain we'd be skiing. If he couldn't handle it, my wife would have to come get him, no arguments. So the day comes. My kids and I meet up with Annie and Tom. I explain the runs we plan to hit, including a bowl that's not crazy hard, but definitely not beginner stuff. Annie assures me Tom can handle it. Tom puffs up his chest and says he's an excellent skier. My kids exchange a knowing look, but I figure, fine, let's give him a shot. We start out on some easy terrain, and I can already tell Tom's not at the level he or his mom claimed. He's more of an intermediate skier. Solid enough on groomed runs, but not ready for the bowl. Still, I give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he just needs to warm up. When we get to the bowl, Tom freezes. He stares down the slope, panic written all over his face, and refuses to even try. My kids, who are itching to drop in, are visibly annoyed, but I tell them to hang tight while I call my wife to pick Tom up. And here's where the plan falls apart. My wife says she and Annie are in the middle of cross-country skiing and they can't come get him right now. I remind her that this was exactly what we agreed wouldn't happen, but she just says, "Figure something out." So now I'm stuck with Tom, who's looking miserable and embarrassed, and my kids, who are frustrated that our ski day is derailed. At this point, I'm over it. I take Tom to the lodge and drop him off at the kindercare. Yes, it's technically for kids 7 and under, but I know the staff at the resort, and they agree to keep an eye on him. Oh man. I leave a voicemail for my wife and Annie, letting them know where he is, and I take my kids back out for some real skiing. We spend the next 3 hours shredding the slopes and having a blast. When we're done, we swing by the lodge, and Tom is still there, looking pretty unhappy. Yeah, I bet. Later that evening, Annie, her husband, and my wife all come at me, saying what I did was inappropriate. Annie's upset that I put Tom in kindercare. My wife is annoyed that I didn't try harder, and I'm just standing there like, are you serious? I explain again that Tom wasn't capable of keeping up, and that it wasn't fair to my kids or me to sacrifice our ski day. I also point out that if Annie and Tom had been honest about his ski level, we could have planned this better, like booking him a lesson or finding another activity for him. Annie tried to defend herself by saying private lessons are expensive, like $400 for 3 hours, and group lessons were already booked. I get that, but at the same time, lying about his ability and throwing him into terrain he couldn't handle wasn't the solution. My wife said I could have stayed on easier runs with Tom for the day, but I wasn't about to ruin the trip for my kids because Annie wanted to save face. So was I the jerk here? I feel like I set clear expectations and they ignored them. What was I supposed to do? Babysit Tom all day while my kids miss out on skiing? Not gonna happen. Not the jerk. It's too bad your wife didn't listen to you or your kids. It sounds like she expected you to slow down to accommodate the kid, but that's something that she should have cleared with you first. Hopefully, his parents have enrolled him in lessons for the rest of the trip. Am I the jerk for simply asking my boyfriend's dad to put a plate in the cabinet? I was making a fruit pie with a creamy filling and a bunch of fresh fruit on top. Strawberries, kiwis, mango, the works. I was in the kitchen finishing it up while my boyfriend's dad, Stefan, was also there prepping something for dinner. His grandpa was supposed to arrive at 6 p.m., so Stefan was rushing to finish his dish and clean up before then. Meanwhile, I was trying to put the finishing touches on my pie. The kitchen was pretty chaotic, but I was minding my own business and staying out of his way. As the clock struck 6 p.m., Stefan started moving at warp speed, wiping down counters and putting things away like he was in a race. He looked over at me and said, "Hurry up," which already made me feel a little weird. I was moving as fast as I could, but I had a few things left to clean up. I quickly put the pie in the freezer and grabbed 2 other things to put away, a plate and some leftover ingredients. The plate, which I wasn't using anymore, was sitting on the counter and Stefan seemed annoyed by it being there. I was heading to the second fridge in the garage to stash the leftovers and, trying to be helpful, said over my shoulder, "You can put that plate away if you want, it's clean." I said it in a totally normal tone, nothing bossy or rude. At least, that's how I thought it came across. I came back inside to finish cleaning up the berries I had been using, and that's when Stefan turned to me and said, in this super serious tone I had never heard from him before, "Daphne, don't ever tell me to put things away like that again." I was stunned. It wasn't like he yelled or anything, but the way he said it hit me hard. I'm a sensitive person, probably more than most, and when someone speaks to me like that, especially out of nowhere, it really messes with me. When I was growing up, people would snap at me unexpectedly, even over small stuff. It's like my brain just shuts down. I couldn't process what I'd done wrong. All I wanted to do was disappear. So I left the kitchen and didn't come back for the rest of the evening. Later, I told my boyfriend what happened, thinking he'd understand or at least see my side. Instead, he completely sided with his dad. He said what I did was disrespectful and implied that I had it coming. I was shocked. Disrespectful? For saying someone could put away a clean plate if they wanted to? I honestly didn't see how what I said was wrong, and now I'm sitting here wondering if I'm missing something. Was I really being a jerk here? I feel like I've been polite and respectful to Stefan this whole time, and he's never talked to me like that before. I get that people have different communication styles, and maybe he thought I was being bossy, but that wasn't my intention at all. If anything, I was just trying to help. Now though, I feel like I'm walking on eggshells around him, and I don't know how to move past it. For context, this isn't the first time that something has happened like this. My boyfriend's family is super tight-knit, and they all seem to have this unspoken rule of always siding with each other no matter what. I love my boyfriend, but sometimes it feels like I'm an outsider who will never truly be part of their family. I don't want to make a big deal out of this or cause tension, but I also don't want to feel like I'm constantly under scrutiny or doing something wrong just by existing. Am I overthinking this, or was Stefan being unnecessarily harsh? I really don't know what to do here. Not the jerk. You got told off for being disrespectful for clarifying that a plate was clean and could safely be put away when everyone was busy tidying up? I would tend to believe that Stefan is stressed out, rushing to get everything perfect before his dad shows up, and misinterpreted your words as some kind of an order. He likely felt you weren't hustling fast enough, and that put you in a bad place in his mind, so he was already primed to read your words in the worst light. None of this excuses him treating you like a disrespectful kid when you were actively helping out. I mean, you baked a pie for him. I appreciate that you're not a confrontational person. You've had a life that trained you to avoid that. But the appropriate thing to do here was to stand up for yourself, or at least clarify that it wasn't an order. Frankly, I would ask myself whether I wanted to remain in a relationship that puts me in contact with Stefan anymore. He's apparently unpredictable when he's stressed, and that's not something you need in your life. I would also seriously question your relationship with your boyfriend, because he ought to have your back and has opted to side with his dad regardless of the sense of it. If you haven't got your partner's back, you aren't partners, just people who live together and go through the motions. Am I the jerk for refusing to give my daughter a kidney? I'm 38, female. My daughter, who's 21, is suffering from kidney failure. We've been estranged for 3 years, and it was due mainly to the fact that she was taking her health issues, as well as her fights with her dad, who's 38, and stepmom, who's 31, out on me. I spent hundreds of my husband, Ethan, who's 49, and my own money on making therapy for my daughter, but she has remained bitter and difficult. Ethan and I have 2 kids, who are 9 and 11. I had to give up quite a bit in terms of career prospects due to my first pregnancy. My parents also disowned me, but then Ethan helped me get a degree in accounting and also a real estate license. I have connections from Ethan that are helping me do nearly 6 figures in real estate commissions, and I just joined an accounting firm that hired me based on the client connections I have from Ethan. Now I'm working 50-hour weeks, but I love it because I'm finally earning 6 figures, and Ethan's business is also at a place where he can work at home. My daughter at this point was mostly low contact since she turned 18, but now she's back because she needs a kidney. I made the mistake of letting friends know about her situation, and everybody I know from my mommy groups from when my daughter was born started dogpiling on me saying, "You gotta do this, mama," and like I'd be held down to get my kidney. Because of this pressure, despite Ethan saying no, I went to the doctor and found out I was a match. I tried to reach out to my daughter's dad to see if he's a match, but her stepmom had apparently already called her screaming that her dad was the provider for her and 3 kids, so how dare she ask this of her father? My ex said that his duty was obviously to his wife and his kids, so no testing for him. And so he and everybody else just wanted to be my kidney. I tried to communicate to my daughter that I'm afraid of surgery. I was too new to take that much time from work, so I'd likely be working while in pain. She replied asking, "Doesn't Ethan make a lot of money?" I told her again how risky the surgery was, and she said, echoing my friends, "I don't care. This isn't about you." I was so furious from that conversation that when I went to see the doctor and the doctor asked if somebody was coercing me, I told him that at this point, I'd rather die than continue to serve my ungrateful, rude daughter. I said I indeed felt coerced, and if I did do it, I'd probably end up having burning resentment towards the recipient and the doctors if I woke up in pain. The doctor immediately said I am therefore not a compatible donor and that I should never feel like I'm a prisoner. I told my friends and Ethan this, and while Ethan just asked if I was okay and that the boys and him need me, my friends were furious and tried to shame me online with, "What kind of mother posts?" They're insisting I go back and say I was lying and that I've changed my mind, to sign something showing I wasn't coerced and get it notarized if it's what it takes. Am I the jerk? I think OP is hiding a lot of information that will paint her in a bad light. This write-up is full of narcissistic behavior. I discovered that my boyfriend is cheating after buying him an expensive Christmas gift. I, 25 female, discovered that my ex-boyfriend, male 26, had been cheating on me for 5 months. I was really devastated and felt a lot of rage inside of me, especially after buying him a new PlayStation 5 since he wanted one but couldn't afford it. I was saving up a lot of money to buy him the console with some games. We'd been dating for 3 years and living together for a year and a half. I immediately kicked him out after his side girl messaged me apologizing, not knowing that he had a girlfriend. I didn't believe her because I trusted my boyfriend a lot, but she came with receipts. There were a lot of messages where he flirted with her and he even sent pictures to her. I was just so upset. The worst part is when I confronted him. He didn't even try to deny it and just called me boring. He insulted me a lot, saying I was no fun and he deserves better. I was really enraged. I started screaming at him that he doesn't do anything around here and never paid rent because he's a lazy, jobless jerk who can't even bother looking for a decent job. At one point, I mentioned how he will never get the PS5 that I bought and return it soon to the store. He looked like a deer in headlights. That jerk. He immediately changed his attitude and acted sorry, started apologizing and crying, saying he never meant to cheat and promised me he would make it up to me. He really wants that PS5, doesn't he? He's a jerk. He never cared for my feelings. He only cared when I mentioned something he wanted. Such hypocrisy. I wasted no time and kicked him out. He's still sending me a lot of texts filled with apologies and even an ugly photo of him crying. I told him to not waste my time because he won't get the PS5. We're done. Then I blocked him. I won't take the PS5. I already have one, but I remembered that my parents were planning on buying one for my little brother. The plan was going to be them buying the PS5 and I would buy the games for it with an extra PS Store gift card. But looks like I will give my parents a call and tell them there's a change in our plans for my brother's gift. Let me guess. When you previously asked him to get a job and contribute to the household, he called you a gold digger. Good for you, not taking his gaslighting and BS any longer. I'm sure you figured out by now that he was never going to contribute and intended to use you for a free ride while he had his fun. You are so well rid of him. Best Christmas gift you could give yourself. OP. He actually called me controlling. We fought a lot about it, but this was my first time showing a serious reaction to it. Update. Today was amazing. I celebrated Christmas with my family, my parents, and my little brother. My parents cooked the best food, so I ate well after not having an appetite for a few days. It was wonderful. As for my parents' agreement about the gifts, we agreed on something. I'll gift the PS5 and games to my brother. My parents bought him an Oculus for the new PS5 and other accessories for the console. When the time came for the presents, I was shocked to learn that my brother got me an expensive gift. He got me some makeup from Sephora and a gift card. My parents then informed me that my brother was saving for my gift since the beginning of the year. I cried. I literally started bawling my eyes out and I gave him a big hug. I thanked him a lot for the gift and said that I loved it. When he opened my parents' present, he was really confused and stated that he doesn't have a PS5 for this Oculus. I told him to open my gift. Then he opened it and started crying immediately and hugged me. I don't know what came over me, but I started crying with him. I really love my brother. He's really sweet and a good-behaved kid. He's 12 now. That's why he deserved every gift that he got. It was expensive, yes, but it was worth every penny to see him happy. After we all opened our gifts, I helped him set up the PS5 in his room and we played some games together. Suddenly, he tells me that he loves me and I'm the best big sister in the world. For the third time, I started crying. So there you have it. I had the best Christmas with my family, and seeing my brother so happy was worth the heartbreak I went through. As for my garbage ex, he's still making new accounts on Instagram to apologize. I told him to buzz off, and I know that he's only apologizing because he wants the PS5, not because he feels guilty. I mentioned that I gave it to someone who deserves it way more than he does. He started going off on me, and I said if he didn't leave me alone, I'll call the cops. He stopped after that, and I haven't heard from him ever since. Am I the jerk for saying I don't want to be called aunt? I'm 32, female. My father is 20 years older than his younger brother, David, who's 34. Due to various factors, David spent a majority of his early years with my parents. By the time I was 10 and David was 12, he moved in. David and my dad look nearly identical, and people always assumed that he was his son. My parents always said that he was their first kid. They loved him like a son, etc. I always felt a bit weird about this. David is a nice guy, but he's not my brother. I never understood why it was my parents' job to pick up the slack of my grandparents. It caused a few disagreements in my youth that always boiled down to, David has nothing, you have everything, be nice. I hated that I essentially went from an only child to a younger sister without being asked. I never looked at David as a brother, but obviously due to our small age gap, I never saw him as an uncle. To me, he's just family. We get along well. David is now married and they have a daughter, Aria. My parents are grandma and grandpa to her. It does make me feel some sort of way that they've christened her as their first grandbaby, but I've accepted I can't control how they feel and relate themselves to David. So long as when my husband and I have kids, they're the same to them, and I know they will be. That's fine. The real issue is that David, his wife, and my parents have tried making me Aunt Tabitha. I don't like it. Aria is not my niece. I tried to just refer to myself as my first name with her, but the hint wasn't going through. As Aria is too little to speak, 8 months, I plan to let it go for now. Yesterday, we were at my parents' for Christmas. Aria was being fussed over, as usual. When it came time for David and his wife to help her unwrap the gifts my husband and I got her, David told Aria, "This is from Auntie Tabitha and Uncle Mike." Without thinking, I said, "Just Tabitha and Mike." David gave me an odd look, but went back to unwrapping. Later on, privately, David asked if I was okay. I said, yes, why? He said I got weird during gifts. I said, not weird, just factual. I'm not Aria's aunt. He was still confused. I said I'm not his sister. This seemed to hurt his feelings, but he said okay, apologized, and said he wouldn't say it again. My mom pulled me aside later and said I was cruel to David. She said he considered me his sister. I simply said I'm not, and I'm not that baby's aunt. My mom gave me a disgusted look. She and my dad barely spoke to me the rest of the night, though David and his wife were polite. My husband feels there were better ways of going about it. Am I the jerk? It's okay to feel how you feel. Your feelings are 100% valid. It's nice they're trying to include you. My kids call both my best friends aunt and uncle whilst they're young, but naturally will drop to first names when they're older. It's not always about blood relations. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.